Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're burning daylight. Howdy there, daylight burners. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you had a good weekend and you're enjoying your Labor Day holiday if you are in fact celebrating it. I am not. I'm riding a horse right now on Sunday, and I'll be riding a horse on Labor Day as well. So anyhow, I hope you're having a good weekend and everything's treating you just fine. I've got a really pretty cool episode for you today. It's a little more on the serious side of things, and but it was a really interesting conversation. I enjoyed it, and I'm going to have this guy back on in the near future. But Chet Simper is his name, and he's a fellow listener of the show. He's a daylight burner, if you will. And he had messaged me and said, "Hey, I work on a pretty unique outfit, and I'd like to visit with you about it." And I thought that would be pretty cool. And he told me to search his name on YouTube, and he's got some videos of some kind of typical cowboy shit, just roping cattle, working his dogs, and he runs I believe there are a lot of like blackmouth cur type dogs, just more of like your southern type cow dog as opposed to like your herding type dogs that you see further north, like the healers and the border collies and stuff like that, where he's using more of like the go find them type dogs, and so like your blackmouth curs and your catahoulas and something that's really going to get a hold of a cow. But anyway, we had a good visit about like his outfit that he works for and how unique it is, and as well as dealings with the BLM, or the Bureau of Land Management as it's called, BLM for short, and kind of the struggles that your normal rancher who runs on government ground comes across on pretty well a daily basis. And it's a good interview, and it was a good conversation. And like I said, I kind of cut it short, but we were running long as far as time-wise goes on an episode basis. So I'm gonna have him back on, and we're gonna probably delve more into the weeds than some people may care for. But that's what I like to do, is just really get in there. So anyway, welcome Mr. Chet Simper to the show. Here we go. All right, welcome Daylight Burners. I am here with Mr. Chet Simper. He is a listener of the show from Utah. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep. I live in Utah. I work a lot in Nevada, but yeah, I live in Utah. So.
Okay, so you're kind of over off of Highway 50 then.
Yep. So.
Okay, I've drove through that area once. It's there's a whole lot of nothing out there.
Yep, we're kind of the last stop to nowhere. So.
Yeah, the loneliest stretch of highway is what they call that, and on Highway 50 from pretty well Austin to basically Grand Junction, I guess. There's just not much there. And so Chet's he sent me a couple videos here and there, and he's got some videos on YouTube of working his dogs and just roping cows, just kind of some typical kind of cowboy shit. And he messaged me and said he's got a pretty unique outfit, and I talked a little bit more with him about it, and it sounds like really interesting deals. So we're gonna talk a little bit about what he does on his ranch, and then kind of how he interacts with the BLM, some of the struggles they have there, and that's a subject I haven't covered a whole lot, and mostly because I'm ignorant on the subject for the most part. Like I mentioned before, I grew up kind of on the eastern edge of where the BLM type outfits start, and so we had some, but not near like you have in Utah and Nevada and Idaho, where most of the state is owned by the government, and so there's a lot of friction, as you may well know, between ranchers and the Bureau of Land Management over the last really since it started, but especially over the last like 10 years or so, and is when stuff has really kind of come to a head. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that. Try to be as I'll let Chet kind of inform me on their point of view, and I'll kind of explain from what I know about it. And I've done some research, but like I said, I don't. This is one of those subjects I didn't want to, even though I had the talking out my ass segment, this is one I really don't want to talk out my ass on. So I kind of want to get a point of view from somebody who knows on a personal basis what goes on there. So anyhow, Chet, so you're in Delta, Utah, or thereabouts.
Yep, right, pretty close, right in there, Delta, Utah. Yep. So.
Okay, so that's pretty deserty country there.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've only been through there once, but it's like I said, it's a long way to nowhere, and there's a lot of kind of sagebrush and sand, basically, is what I remember of it.
Yeah. So, yep. And so I live here, and I guess technically I own my own business. I'm actually a civil engineer, and I do some of that, but I kind of moved here to go back to work in ranching, and there's an outfit here that I've worked for. I used to work full time years ago. I day worked for them a lot. When I started having kids, I had to kind of quit the engineering construction. I came back here. I do a little bit of that. I do a lot with them now. Here in Delta, we run a couple hundred head of cows in the summer, just north of town and out on a permit. And then we do quite a bit of farming. We raise hay and corn and small grains, and we have about a 6,000 head feed yard that we run. It's mainly a background yard. We finish just a few calves. We basically background our own calves and feeds for some customers, and it's pretty small scale deal. But then in the winter, and we also have a bunch of range permits in southern Nevada.
Okay.
That the cows that are here in the summer, they go down there in the winter, and then there's a pretty good sized jag cattle that stay down there all year. And so, it's just unbearably hot down there in the summer. So we don't really, we don't do a lot. You don't do a lot of cattle work down there in the summer. So I spend most of my summer here farming and doing my own thing, and then I spend a lot of time camped out there in the winter trying to get that deal straightened out. As far as cattle.
Does it get pretty cold down there in the winter as well, or?
No, as far as south as that is, it's actually reasonably mild in the winter, and that's you kind of get up in the mountains on the northern end of the range, and it can get pretty chilly, but nothing like up north. It's actually a pretty good deal to kind of get down there in the winter. So
go play snowbird for a little bit, huh?
Yeah, it's gotten a little harder as the kids get older, but it's still a pretty good deal. So,
right on. What kind of ration are you feeding at that backgrounding yard?
The bulk of our ration is barlage. It's 3-way and barley and wheat that we green chop.
Okay, just kind of almost a haylage type deal.
Yeah, that's kind of the steak and potatoes of the deal, and then we mix. They raise quite a bit of alfalfa hay here, so we mix that in, and then as the calves kind of start getting in the program, they start moving up on wheat and corn and the typical grain type,
Oh, okay.
Getting them ready to kind of move. And, the majority of them, they kind of hit that 900-pound mark. They get on a truck and head back east, back to the big feed yards kind of deal.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, those ones are, I don't know if the big yards make so much money off those, but they're really easy ones, especially coming in that heavy.
We feel like we kind of take the brunt of that, to be honest with you. So.
Yeah, I know how that goes. That's how it was when we were doing that confined cow-calf deal. Yeah, once we shipped those calves, man, they performed like you wouldn't believe. I think
Yeah.
They were over 4 pounds a day, ADG, and the conversion rate was through the roof. The closeouts were just phenomenal. I think we had a lot of, it was like 150 head, and outside of the processing medicines, they spent $20 total on medicine,
Yeah.
from intake to slaughter, and but getting them to that feedlot was, I think we had 15% death loss on those kids or something like that. It was
Yeah.
we bore the brunt of it.
Yeah. I've heard you talk about that, and just to the nature of the way we run our cow-calf operation, we get our calf crops spread out pretty wide,
Yeah.
So we'll buy calves to fill in those pens, and due to just the desert country, a lot of the bulls get run year round, and so a lot of those heifers, not a lot, but a small set of those heifers they'll calf in the feed yard because they were bred way too young, and
Oh yeah.
our survival rate on those is atrocious, just because they're young and they have them in the winter in that feed yard, and I couldn't even imagine running a cow-calf operation in those conditions. It would give me ulcers, man. Oh my gosh. So.
I tell you what, I worked my ass off on that deal, and when they first pitched it to us, I really thought, I was like, if this works, it changes the beef industry. I mean, 'cause it would, but then we found out real quick that it's one thing to say you're going to change the beef industry, but it's a whole different deal to try and do it. And I think we brushed up against 90% calf crop once, but I think that first initial one, I think we had 25% death loss, and we hovered right around that, like 15 to 18%. I was there. I think I was there almost 4 years of the confined cow calf, and so we're looking at 8 or 9 calf crops that we did, because we did 2 to 3 calf crops per year. There towards the tail end, we started doing a normal, breed heifers to calve end of January, first part of February, and kicked them out on grass and did it that way, which is, a lot of we had the ground, we didn't have a ton of ground, but we had enough that we could have, if we had some pins that were really breaking hard on scours, we could have just kicked them out on grass, and that would have cleared them up almost overnight.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm not going to talk bad on anything down there, but it could have been done a lot different, and I didn't have much say in all of that. So like I said, I'm not gonna talk bad on anybody, but it could have been done a lot different, and I don't know how they're doing it now, but it was fun for a little while, and then it got to just be, it was work. And,
I can imagine.
When it becomes work, and you're just, you wake up and you're just like, oh, back at it, and that's when it kind of, you get a little sour on things. But
well, we've taken a different approach on our cow-calf. We 100% calve heifers, everything outside in the winter. We never check on them. I haven't, outside of those ones I was talking to feed yard, I haven't helped to pull a calf or done anything like that in years. And our logic is we get them out on that desert in that kind of mild winter weather and let them handle it. And we, if they can't, we cull them. If they don't bring in a calf, we don't keep that cow, and we buy. Yeah. We really focus on the calving ease bulls, and we feel like with the labor costs associated with calving them up, it's not worth the trouble. So that's the route we've gone there, and I guess I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it sure is nice, from a worrying about a perspective. But, so.
Yeah, well, it sure makes it easier on you though when you can throw, and those calving ease bulls. It's not necessarily that they're throwing a light calf. A lot of times it's how they're shaped.
Right.
And you don't get the big blocky headed calves that come in, and they And a lot of that calving has to do is this gestation period is not quite as long, so they might throw them a couple weeks early, and
Yeah.
so you might have a little tougher time getting them going. But when if you can get them up and sucking, then they do pretty well. But that place I worked on up in Montana, they ran the same bulls on their older cows as they did their heifers. They were pulling every other calf basically, and it's just
Yeah, I couldn't handle that. So.
I don't mind pulling a calf. I kind of enjoy it. Like just the technique behind it, getting seesawing those shoulders on out, and then rotating so the hips don't catch, and just using that animal's momentum to because a lot of times you're not really even pulling, you're just kind of keeping tension. The biggest
Yeah, keep them from going back in, right? So.
That's the biggest part on most of them is they get uncomfortable and then they stand up and that calf sucks back in, and
Yeah.
and it's so you're more than anything you're just kind of keeping tension on it so they don't suck back in. But after I know there at Cactus one time I pulled 8 calves in the matter of about a 2 hour period. Like we were just getting ready to head to the barn and let the night crew take over, and they brought a heifer to the chute, and we pulled a calf, and then they come with another one, and eight heifers later, I finally said, all right, the night crew's here. You guys have been drinking coffee for a half hour already. You guys can take over from here. But
Yeah, I haven't pulled 8 calves in 5 years probably. So.
Yeah, that's the way it should be. Those old cows. Once that calf's on the ground, they can do a lot better job of taking care of it than we can. So that's kind of
Sure.
my theory is that's what they're meant to do. Let them do their job. And if they need some help, yeah, you step in. But other than that, just let them do their thing.
Yeah, that's our approach. So.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the best way to do it. You might have a few drop calves here and there, but overall, I think you make better mothers that way too. That's one thing a lot of people don't take into consideration is when if you got to run that heifer in the chute and or rope her out in the open and pull that calf, she already doesn't know what's going on, and then you go to pulling on her and whatnot, then she's really not going to like that calf a lot of times, and a lot of times it takes years for them to get over that. A couple other calves on the ground before they sure enough become a good mother. So
Yeah.
I'm all about just letting them do their thing as much as you can.
Yeah, and I mean, we're fortunate, I guess, that we have that winter range where the weather's so mild. And I spent a lot of time up north when I was younger, and they can't always do that. But
No, there's when it gets that cold, and you gotta get them in, warm them up, and whatnot. But and then you can also roll back your calving window to start calving when it's a little warmer. But a lot of times just the weather don't cooperate with you. So
yeah, it kind of does it still. So.
yeah, I know our first calf crop there when we were doing that confined deal, we had an April where we had a little mini blizzard every single week of that month. I mean, it was just about the time the snow would get melted off, we'd come in and put on another 6 inches or so, and it was right in the heat of that calving window, and boy, we didn't lose a whole lot, but it was just we played hell trying to keep them calves alive, and yeah, and April's supposed to be pretty mild month, but
Yeah.
what weather will do what it's gonna do. There's not much you can do about it.
Yeah.
Well, so you said you run a couple hundred head of cows, give or take, and so what kind of I guess on the BLM ground is I don't know a whole lot as far as how you get a lease. I know a lot of those leases are kind of grandfathered in or passed down with families and whatnot. But I know Utah's what, like 60% government owned? About.
It's I think it's really high. I know Nevada's the highest, but Utah is really high.
Yeah, I think it's Utah and Nevada, and then like Alaska.
Yeah.
As far as percentage, I think Nevada's 80% government property, and then I know Utah is right up there with them. But
yeah. Well, I guess the way it works is, and you'll hear some different opinions about this, I guess, is you don't rent, you don't rent the grazing from the BLM. You have to own what they call a base property. And the way that was set up is when people homesteaded this country, or they first moved into this country, obviously they settled on the water sources. And,
yeah.
And then the cattle or sheep or whatever, they grazed out from there. And, and later on, as they started organizing things, early 1900s, they allotted the grazing based on how much to that base property you had,
Yeah.
And so to obtain one of these grazing permits, you have to either buy the base property or have a suitable base property and then buy the permit from you. And so the outfit I work for, their family has been established in southern Nevada forever, and they've owned different farms and places down there and different permits, and for generations. And and then as things changed, you hear a while back they sold some of those resources down there and moved kind of some up here to Utah, and kind of when I came in the picture, and we started running things the way we are now. So, they do own quite a bit of private ground down there, and it's all clustered around the water sources. And then they own I say we, I mean they own the water rights to the various creeks and springs and, the stock water rights. And they own some irrigation water rights to, because a lot of them old places did a little farming. We don't really farm any of them now. They're out in the middle of nowhere. They're all small, but, and so, and some have been in their family for a while. Some they bought, a generation or two ago, and, and they've cobbled that all together and worked and sacrificed their whole lives to do that. And as a lot of Western families have, and it seems like it's politically popular to say they're just renting it, and people act like it's renting an apartment and you just get a 30-day notice and you get off. Well, I mean, you've invested generations of resources into turning these into what they are. And then I guess the other thing I hear a lot is we're welfare ranchers. We don't pay a full, the price that we pay for AMU isn't equivalent to what it would cost you to go run a pasture. And, I guess my argument to that is I don't know any industry in the world or any person that pays the full rental value of the property they own to the federal government. I own a home and I pay my taxes, but for whatever my house would rent for, I don't pay that to the federal government. I just,
no,
so I don't know why, I don't know where that comes from or why they would expect these ranchers to do that. But, through the doctrine of beneficial use, they obtain these grazing rights legally, and just because it's people don't like it now, I don't feel like it's right to steal from people that way, but I guess I'm kind of a minority, so.
Well, and that's, and a lot of the pushback that the Bundys got after that Bunker Hill deal or Bunkerville, I guess, was, they got labeled as free grazers, but a lot of people don't know that Cliven paid his grazing fees to Clark County, Nevada, because he was not recognizing BLM as the steward of those lands that should have, he believed that those lands belonged to the state of Nevada, which he has a valid case there. Whether he's wrong or right, that's not for me or you to decide.
Right.
But it's a legitimate argument, and so it's not that he wasn't paying his fees. He just, the BL, it was basically a pissing match between him and the BLM as to
how he had to pay his fees instead of just collecting a check from Clark County, which wouldn't have been any issue at all. They could have just cashed the check and then wrote check to the BLM. No, they decided they were going to go ahead and confiscate his cattle for back grazing fees. And we'll get into that here in a little bit, but it's been a hot topic here, like I said, the last 5-10 years for sure, but it's been building up to that for a long time.
My whole life.
Yeah, those Hammonds up in Oregon, they were fighting that BLM deal for like years, I think.
Oh yeah.
And that the big deal there was they were still are the last ranch to hold out and not sell their grazing permits and their home base to the BLM to build that wildlife refuge, which is all used to. I always thought it was good intentions, but I question that anymore as to what the true intentions are behind these environmental deals.
And they're evil intention in my.
Yeah, I think initially, you got some of those the diehard animal people that I really think they have a good intention in mind. You're kind of average.
Sure.
Or whatever. I think they have good intentions when they do their activism, but and this is I take it you're a fairly libertarian leaning fellow.
You could probably make the pretty strong case to that.
Yeah, I just going out on a limb. If you're listening to my podcast and I haven't scared you away yet, you probably at least of the mindset of that people ought to just leave you the hell alone, and I'll leave them the hell alone as well. But it's one of those deals where every time the government gets involved in something to try to make it better, there's always these unintended consequences, like you want to save the spotted reptile species of whatever, and that because it's going to make a minuscule dent in the ecosystem, which that's a valid argument. We're as ranchers and in the agriculture industry, we're the true stewards of the land.
Sure.
They all one of the big buzzwords around for the last. Oh, I guess it'd be about the same time that the tensions with the BLM have really been ramped up. So the last 5-10 years, sustainable agriculture has been kind of a buzzword thrown around. Well, you look at some of these ranches; they've been around for 100 years, and they're still going strong, better than ever. Well, how is that not sustainable?
Yeah. So.
And what would be considered like a conventional style of ranching, where you vaccinate, you use antibiotics, you use hormones because you're trying to get the most pounds on an animal in the shortest amount of time, and a lot of that has to do because you don't have a whole lot of feed there, especially in southern Utah. There's not much out there.
Right.
And when I was talking with Scott Hall the other day, he was talking about his the Bramer bulls that they ran, but you got to have something's going to travel out and go find some feed, otherwise they ain't going to make it.
Yeah, I felt like he was talking about our cattle when he was talking about that. We run the exact same program on the cattle.
Yeah, and they got to be tough, and they got to step on out and find some grass. It's not something they can't just mill around and keep going. They've really got to step out and move and go graze. I mean, it's you gotta have those little cows got to work, and so it behooves you to find some good genetics that's good they're going to grow, and it behooves you to when you can bring them into brand and whatnot, stick an implant in there, because that's 30 days you're not going to have to feed them at the end of the day. And people may not agree with it, but they're not the ones raising cattle either.
Yeah.
When you're running tight margins like we are,
Yeah.
you use every trick in the book to try to get those calves off the place as quick as you can at the most amount of pounds you can get on them too. And it's it's you're really like I said, you're using every trick in the book to make a buck, and usually it's more than that. It's more just to kind of break even, and then it's one of those deals that we struggle with as an industry, trying to convey that message. And I don't know what the best way to go about it is, but I know we haven't been doing a great job of it. And
yeah, I don't either. And I agree with that.
I think I think conversations like we're having now, I think the more we can have like that, it does, without getting up in arms, but, explaining our case, why we do what we do, it makes a big difference. And it, like I said before, those diehard animal rights people, you're never going to win them over, but there's a lot of people on the sidelines just kind of watching in that you can really do some damage if you get your hackles up and just go full defensive on it. But yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I don't have a good answer on how to go about it, but I think just having an honest conversation about what we do is a good start. And I guess that kind of leads us into a little more on the BLM ground, like you said before. It's not just that you rent the grazing rights. I mean, you have to own land. You have permits, and like in the case of Lavoy Finicum, when he really he went full outlaw, I guess, on was the BLM took a bunch of his water and never paid him, never replenished it, and that was his only live water source on his on that particular grazing permit. And as my dad covered before, like, if you don't have water, you don't live. That's it is far more valuable resource that we really take for granted. I mean, we're one of the only countries on earth that not only do we have an abundance of clean water, but so much so that we take a dump in clean water every day.
Yeah. Well,
and it's crazy, but
I just by nature of where I am and what I do, I get a pretty good perspective on a lot of that. When I said we kind of have a unique outfit, one of the unique things is, for better or worse, is the range we run on in the winter is. I really don't know how big it is per se, but I know it's better than 300,000, maybe better than 400,000 acres, and a lot of that's really rough, really dry country. And, and that's what I say unique is there's a pretty good population of truly wild cattle. And I don't mean our domestic cows that we've misgathered and have gotten a little rank to handle, which they certainly can, and which most people call wild cattle, and there's cattle that have been there, for years. I've talked to guys that are in their 80s, that 90-year-old that can not remember when those cattle weren't there, and they've kind of turned into wild animals. And
yeah,
so we don't spend a ton of time trying to gather them, just because from the economic standpoint, the effort doesn't really worth the reward. But we enjoy doing it. It's fun. We run those dogs, and it's and we from a management standpoint, we do need to do it so they're not using the resources, and mainly so those bulls aren't breeding our cows, and
oh yeah,
they're just terrible. I mean, my wife doesn't want me to swear on here, but they're shit cattle, and
yeah.
So they're amazing from one standpoint, because they never get taken care of. They've never been a human taken care of in generations, and they really travel the country, and even on the droughtiest years, every one of them will calve. You catch a cow, it has a calf, and
yeah.
but they're just not marketable. And so when people tell me we need to raise beef completely natural, I've eaten plenty of them. Sometimes we accidentally, they're so wild that sometimes they get hurt or something when we're gathering them. And, so we'll eat them, or, sometimes we'll shoot one to make jerky or eat while we're out there or something. And I would just invite people to come eat some of that, I don't think they'll be wanting that truly natural beef no more. I mean, it's, as an industry, we've done a real good job improving that. And to go away from that, I think it's just crazy. So, but.
Hey, you were kind of cutting in and out there, but yeah, as you were, I guess just to kind of piggyback where you're cutting out is, yeah, that when you get into that all natural beef, and if you really, like you said, if you want truly natural or organic type stuff, those wild cattle would be it. And yeah, I've never had something like that, but I've had some some pretty stringy some like basically just taking one of your old herd bulls. It'd be about like what you're getting, but with less meat and tough, stringy. I mean, you'd be better off slicing off a chunk of the tops of your boots and chewing on that, and you probably get a little better flavor off of it. But
yeah, I got a pretty good story about how we ate one this winter if we have time. But yeah, it's just I think people kind of lost. We've been so spoiled with all the resources we had for so long. People kind of lose perspective of the difficulty and ourselves.
I think so. It's the people really don't realize where the food comes from, and I've said it 100 times, but at the minimum you're looking at 2 years from getting a heifer bred to getting that calf on your plate. And I mean, it's a big process, and there's a lot of shit that happens in those 2 years. And that's, and I've mentioned before, there's, you're trying your best to get that calf through the winter or whatever, and get him on a truck and on, into a feedlot. But, there's times where that calf is actively working against you, trying to leave this world. And then there's nothing you can do to stop it. You try everything you can, but it's to no use. And I don't know. It's you kind of get a little bit of a gallows humor from it, because you deal with death, and maybe not so much on a daily basis, but you deal with it a lot, and so we have a little different way of looking at things, and it's not because we're callous or uncaring towards the animals. It's just you deal with death a lot.
Yeah. And we always say we deal with the highest of the highest, because we get it. We're dealing with baby calves and colts and puppies, and we get to see all this life. But we kind of deal with the lowest and lows, because we watch a certain percentage of them die every year, and it.
Oh yeah.
It changes you for sure. So.
Yeah, and like I said, you get a thicker skin on you, and you come off as a lot more rough and tumble than you really are. But you deal with that all the time, and so you got a little different outlook on life, and it's a hard one for people to wrap their head around, but it's the way of the world. And but yeah, when you got all of that going on, you're trying to take care of these cows, trying to manage the ground to make sure you got enough feed to last them through for however long you're keeping them on there, and then you want to save it in enough conditions so that you're going to have feed for the next year, God willing it rains, and then you have somebody like the BLM that comes in, and it really does at times seem like these regulations and stuff, they're just arbitrary. They just kind of pull numbers out of nowhere, and you're like, well, how are we supposed to comply with that? We've been running you've been running this outfit for however long a certain way, and then just overnight you're expected to comply with a new regulation that some genius up in Washington decided this would be a good idea. Well, how do you expect the average guy to just, change their whole way of doing things overnight?
Well, that's, when I say how big that place is, there's three of us that work here full time. And, we get help to go gather it, and we have those good dogs or whatever, but people always wonder how essentially 30 guys cover that much country, because, a lot of places you go out there early and you ride a circle and drop everybody off and you meet in the middle and that, and you gather up a bunch of cows, but in this country you don't do that. If you did that, you would just be wandering through the desert,
Yeah.
So how we gather it is we just go from water source to water source, and if those cows aren't here today, well, they're going to be here tomorrow, or they're going to be here later today, or they're going to be tonight, or the dogs can track them out. Like the water is such a limiting factor that we control those cows. We don't have fences. We don't hurt them. We control their access to the water. Just, we don't have it fenced off in most areas, but, we know where it is and they got to come to it, and that's how we do it. And, and the BLM, like you said, and I speak for myself, not the guys I work for, but every time there's friction with the BLM, it's like you said, the local guys really aren't a problem. It's when they get a mandate, they get some mandate to tell us that they want us to fence off this stretch of this stream or this spring or that, and that doesn't seem like a big deal when you're somewhere else, but when you got such a limited amount, to lose any of it it's crippling, and it's unsustainable. You just can't do it. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And, and the green energy and, just the environmental lobby. And I consider myself somewhat of an environmentalist, but that goes back to where we really are stewards of the land. And, I've got an interview with my dad, another one that I'll post later this week, where he was on a grand jury. He got randomly selected to be on this grand jury, somehow got voted to be the foreman of this grand jury, and none of it was, he didn't bring any of it on himself. It was just kind of a deal that fell into his lap, and it basically was a government cover up at a nuclear bomb factory outside of Denver. And it was big money defense contractors that were, well, they were just doing some just awful environmental stuff with that nuclear waste, and not just covering up the evidence, but pressuring witnesses and just a lot of really underhanded, shady type shit. And you look at that, and it's hard not to become, halfway an environmentalist, because you're like, well, this is, we live here, we gotta take care of it. But the environmental lobby has got so powerful and so just crazy that, and it's permeated, kind of every level of government. Maybe not so much at the local level, but certainly at most state levels. I don't know about Utah's, fairly conservative, but Colorado used to be just as conservative, and you look at them now, and they're just California light.
Yeah.
And so it's it's not that out of the question that Utah follows suit. Just there's more and more.
It's happening, yeah. So.
There's more and more people moving out of places like California and Illinois and New York that are they're going to these Western, kind of dead red conservative states and changing the politics, in just a really short amount of time. And if you don't live in one of the big population centers, well, you're kind of out of luck. And that's kind of how I grew up. Was, Eastern Plains of Colorado are pretty well forgotten. Anybody outside of the Western United States, and even some people in the Western United States don't know, but
yeah,
there's a whole half of Colorado that doesn't involve anything with mountains, and they just
don't even know it's there, huh?
Yeah, and we just get we get pushed off to the wayside, and you get some folks like my dad or some other people that he knew that they do a really good job of representing their constituents, but there's only so much that one person can do, and I'm gonna try to get this guy on. He started a foundation that Jeanette Finicum is kind of working with. She's doing they're doing a really good job of trying to get the word out about the lawsuit that she's involved with, but it's the Center for Self-Governance, and they talk a lot about layer cake versus marble cake federalism, where there's layer cake being very distinct boundaries between the levels of power from local to state to federal level, but anymore that those lines get blurred because a bunch of tax money gets offered from Washington to create these programs at the state and local level, but in the trade-off, the state and local government cede their power or their authority to the federal government, and
Right.
so it looks really good for a little while when you got some tax money rolling in, until you want to do something that's not up to code or whatever, and then it's like, well, like, no, you gave us that power however long ago, and there's nothing you can do about it now. And then normal folks, they're kind of caught blindsided, but a lot of it is if you don't stay informed, and you don't stay vigilant on what your rights are, you get lost in that, and it's a tough thing to do because there's a reason why they create these laws so long-winded and arbitrary and vague, but it's designed to give the most amount of power to the highest levels, and with little to no recourse, and it's an uphill battle for sure, and like you said, the local BLM guys are really typically not the problem. It's from the higher ups, and I know that Ryan Zinke, when he was he was Secretary of the Interior, he did a lot of good stuff, and but of course he got caught up in some sort of scandal, and I'm guessing most of it was kind of contrived, or I really don't know. It's hard to get a straight story on anything, but it's a shame that he kind of got run out of there, but it's kind of the way it goes. You get somebody who wants to make some real difference, and it's just hard.
Yeah. Well, one thing that really frustrates me is that we have these groups around here that do a lot of good work. They're environmental groups, for, like the Sheep Foundation goes and they build stuff to water the sheep, and the Elk Foundation, and they do good work. I have no problem with that, but just in the nature of what I do day to day, I feel like I've watered more wildlife than those guys have ever dreamed of. You know what I mean? And then I don't chase the bighorn sheep away. I don't chase the elk away. I literally live out there every day for weeks to months, and I really, the reason I do what I do is because I enjoy being out there and I love the way it is, and but to watch, people outside of where I live and what I do, it feels like they just blame you for raping the environment, and you just kind of quit caring after a while. You got your thing and they can say what they want, but I don't know what to do about it, so I just don't do anything about it, I guess. But, I feel like I'm out here, working to better the environment they're so proud of, and all they do is complain about it, So.
Yeah. I don't, like you said, I don't know what a good solution is, but I know you gotta stay informed, and you gotta be vigilant and know when those agencies are overstepping their boundaries, and that's tough to do. Like I said, it's those laws are purposely meant to be confusing and long-winded and vague,
Well,
But
the BLM will paperwork you to death. They will, if anybody's thinking about buying a permit or getting into business, just, I've watched people do it. And, the outfit I work for, the guy that's been in charge for a long time, the older guy, he handles them really well, but man, he's got a room in his house just full of letters and paperwork and everything that, and they have an unlimited resource to just bureaucrat you to death, and
oh yeah,
that's kind of one of their deals. And it's, and I really don't deal with a lot of that. I hear a lot about it. They ask my opinion on certain things, but it's kind of hard to watch. You feel bad for them. They don't want to put up with that, but that's part of the deal. You just, yeah, I mean, just never nonstop.
oh yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, you had mentioned before, you were at the Bunkerville standoff, and I guess for there might be some people that don't know, but it was the Bundy standoff down in Bunkerville, Nevada. It was kind of Utah, Arizona, Nevada line, wasn't it?
yeah, it was just south of Mesquite there, not too far. Yeah, kind of where Utah, Nevada, Arizona kind of comes together there roughly. So.
Yeah. And so I guess the story behind that is Cliven Bundy. He's what they would call your classical right wing extremist nowadays, but really he just wanted to be left the hell alone. He didn't still doesn't believe that the BLM has authority over his land. And if you go back to the history of his ranch, his family has been ranching there for over 100 years. They've got the most senior improvements to the water rights on that piece of ground, and by all means they've got the most senior rights to that grazing permit, and because of the increased regulations and
well, it was the desert tortoise really was the driver.
yeah.
Yeah,
The desert tortoise. They made it. It was an endangered species, or they put them on the watch list, or something along those lines.
yeah.
And so eventually he quit paying his grazing fees to the BLM. Instead, he paid them to Clark County, Nevada, where he lived, and what he believed to be the true kind of steward, or the who oversaw that particular piece of land, which, if you go back constitutionally, he has a very valid case. Whether to say he's 100% right or not, that's up for debate. But like I said, it's a valid argument that he had, and the BLM, like I said, they could have just collected that money from Clark County and just wrote him off as an eccentric old man. But they still got their money. But no, that's not how the federal government works. You will not only will you play by the rules, but you will play by them to a T, or they will prosecute you for it. And that's exactly what was happening.
Well, they were setting an example for the rest of us. They wanted everybody else to watch what happened, for sure. There was no question about that.
So they rounded up his cattle and impounded them, basically, and they were getting ready to ship them off to sale for of his unpaid grazing dues. But as mentioned, he paid them to Clark County. That money, as far as I know, is still in escrow, and so it's not like he just wrote a check and they never cashed it, and that money came out of his bank account, and so he doesn't have that money anymore. But the BLM refused to collect on that in the unorthodox way that he was offering up, and so they decided to seize his cattle, and that turned into a standoff where you had a bunch of, they call them militia members, and I think there probably were a few militia groups there, but more than anything, it was just a bunch of concerned citizens that were like, no, this has gone too far. And you had a SWAT team from the BLM, and they can rationalize all they want about the need for a SWAT team, but why does the BLM need a SWAT team? and it's purely for intimidation. That's the long and short of, they'll say that, they're trying to bust the pot growers up in Humboldt County, California or something, but those SWAT teams are there for intimidation. That pure and simple.
Yeah, I met them. They're pretty intimidating. So, yeah, no, when that all happened, I was actually working on a construction job. That's kind of before I came back to this full time, and but I had taken some time off, and I was down helping them gather. We were moving a chunk of the cattle up north here by where I live now, and we heard of, we don't get, there's no cell service or radio, TV, or anything out there like that, and so, but people stop by and talk to us that we know, and we heard about it, and I don't know any of the bunnies personally. I know one guy, one son, somewhat, but the guys I work for, they sure know him, and so we were, and we're, in as far as terms of this country goes, where the cattle we deal with, they're pretty close to them, closest neighbor, you might say, and so they had some concern, but we didn't really know what, and we knew about Cliven's deal for a long time, it's been going on for, we'd obviously heard about it for a long, long time, and but we heard things were kind of escalating, and it had happened. They had threatened to gather his cattle before several times, and but anyway, we kind of finished up what we were doing and went back to, I went back to work and what have you, and then, I really paid close attention to what was going on, and I would talk to people that I knew that were close to the situation, and one of the guys I work for now called me and, was wanting, just saying, hey, we're going to go down, they're wanting help this weekend if you want to come down, and I guess I had other things to do or whatever, but, I felt like I probably should. And so, my wife and stuff went down. We all went down and stayed at their place down there or whatever. And I really didn't know what was going to happen. I had no idea what was really going on. I wasn't involved in any of like the inner workings of it. I was just a guy that showed up, and so we went down there and, there was people that we knew, and we showed up, and the sheriff was there, and he kind of gave a speech and didn't go over too well. And Cliven got up there and gave a big speech, and you could tell he was pretty emotional, but, he's a pretty measured man, pretty self-controlled man, but you could tell, he was a little, I don't know if it was obviously not fear, but I guess, but, pretty big situation. But he gave a pretty good talk and explained kind of his side of the story. And then, well, we all just kind of marched. Everybody just took off to go turn those cows loose. And, nobody had really told us what the program was. and there were those, there was the militia guys there. And one thing that I really dislike that I hear a lot is these crazy militia guys. And that wasn't the case. Even just the regular people there and the militia, it was the most polite, well-behaved, best organized bunch of people you would ever, you'll go to church activities that the people aren't so polite. It was the nicest bunch. Even the militia guys were just super polite, and, they had their deal was organized, and they worked together. They were the real deal. It wasn't a joke, They really were a first-class organization. But, so anyway, we went down there, and somehow or another, the 5 or 6 of us that we got kind of where the cattle corral kind of early. We beat kind of the main organized bunch down there, and kind of a funny story. There was, so all those SWAT team guys, and there was Border Patrol agents and all kinds of, I don't know, they were all in their masks and had their guns, and so we kind of come around the corner, and there they were, and there was other people there I didn't know, but they were yelling at us on a bullhorn, but we couldn't hear what they were saying,
Yeah.
So a bunch of people walked up there to hear what they were saying. Well, what they were telling us was to go away, but the more they'd yell, the closer we would all get, and it kind of. So I get, just in our sheer dumbness, I guess we almost got shot. I don't know, but I don't, at least I hope that wasn't their intention. And but anyway, kind of the bigger bunch of people that was organized showed up. But I just couldn't see a way this worked out good. It looked to me like either nothing was going to happen or a bunch of people were going to get hurt. It didn't seem, man, it was hot and everybody was there and those guys they had their tank bills were hiding behind, and I was, man, this is, I just didn't know what was going to happen, but it wasn't long. I think the main thing is they kind of did it right on that freeway, and once, nobody really shut the freeway down, but just all the people onlooking backed it up, and that's a pretty main route, and it was just a snarl every which way, and, they couldn't really move resources in to deal with all the crowd, so the only choice they had, they delayed and hemmed and hawed and pissed and moaned and kind of tried to fool everybody into leaving this, that, and the other, but eventually they turned all those cows loose, and it was, I didn't know what to expect when I showed up there that morning, but it was a strange deal, but it was, it was really good to see in a lot of ways. Man, if you didn't believe in the Second Amendment before that day, you sure would have after. It was quite a deal to see. So,
well, if there wouldn't have been armed citizens there, that really, it could have turned ugly anyways, but I really think it could have been a lot uglier than it was if there hadn't been that type of standoff, and that the big argument is, by the gun control folks as well, it's, you say it's the Second Amendment is for the well-regulated militia. Well, what's the militia going to do against the government with planes and tanks? And well, you look at every war we've been in since World War II, and we've been fought back with small arms fire for the most part. The mighty U.S. government, and that's not a knock on our troops or anything. It's just it's hard to take over and occupy a country without just wiping out the public, because they will fight back. It's just going to happen. And that was, I really think that the amount of guns out there that day saved a lot of people. Because it was headed to be the next Ruby Ridge or Waco massacre, and it was almost solely because of armed citizens that nothing really big happened there that day. As far as confrontation.
Yeah, I've never. I get you always hear about the militias or so. I never had any exposure to them before that, but man, they got my respect. They, like I said, their main deal was to make sure nobody got hurt, one side or the other, and they were organized, and it was, they certainly outperformed in every aspect. They truly were the people that made that situation turn out as well as it did. No question about it. So that was my perspective of being there,
Yeah. So. Well, I can't imagine that had to have been just, that had to have been just spooky. I can't think of a better word for it, but just that had to have been spooky.
There was a few minutes where the atmosphere got pretty tense, but for the most part, it wasn't. Like I said, a lot of the people there were just a lot of really good people, a lot of nice people. Like I said, well behaved. They're the kind of people that, they weren't these wackos. If you would have asked them to do something, they'd have done it for you just because they were nice people, and that was. Yeah, it was good to see. So,
well, and you gotta kind of hand it to those federal agents. They really could have made a mess out of things. And they had some restraint there, and I'm not going to clear them all
No, I really appreciate it not shooting me. I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, I can imagine. They had some restraint there, and there's been time after time in the past where that wasn't the case, and and it was a good thing because that really could have set something off. We think the political tensions are high now, and they are, but there wasn't a lot of people outside of the big major metropolitan areas that were fans of Obama, and so there was tensions running pretty high at that time as well.
Yeah.
And so it could have been a lot nastier than it was, and so there was pretty good restraint on both sides, and and the media tried to make it out to where it was just a bunch of right-wing extremists and they were calling domestic terrorists for a long time. And
yeah, like I said, that's what's bothered me the most is they really mischaracterized the people that were there. So
well, and I like I said, when we were talking before we recorded, but my initial thought was just like, no, that is the wrong way to go about it. And then the more you read into the backstory of it, and you get to sympathize a little bit more with the Bundys, and then with the Hammond deal up in Oregon, and then when the boy Finnegan was murdered up there, and same type of deal. I was just like, no, you can't draw arms on somebody that you're not helping your cause. Well, then you look at it, you step back and look at it. What actually happened? Well, it was a peaceful takeover. They were armed, but there was no threat issued. There was nobody hurt, and outside of Lavoie being killed, but nobody was ever convicted of any crime in either one of those two incidents, and so
well, man, I thought those guys were crazy when they did that, but I respect them for, man, those talk about sticking to your convictions. They all went to jail. They've really suffered, but, and they, I know for a fact a lot of them were offered some pretty lenient plea deals to get out of that, not the major ones you hear on the news, but some of the other family members, and, they didn't do it. They stuck. They are, whether you agree or disagree with them politically, you have to respect them for sticking to their convictions, man. To the end, they were willing to go to prison for get killed or whatever, it blows my mind. I don't know if I could. I think I could. I don't know if I could.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'd like to think I've got that much conviction, but at the end of it, I don't know.
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah,
it was. But in the case of the Bundys, it was an Obama appointed judge that threw that case out. And she threw it out with prejudice, which means they can't even retry him.
Right.
and that just it goes to show you how much like shenanigans were going on behind the scenes. They were really, like you said, they were out to make an example of the Bundys and kind of keep everyone in line. And Clive and his boys, they weren't about to take it lying down. And and it turns out that they were a lot more prepared and informed and well versed on what they were doing than anybody had really thought, because they came out of it, I won't say unscathed, because like you said, they ended up in prison, not just jail but prison.
Yeah.
And who knows how much money was spent in legal fees and court costs and whatnot, and just lost time and
tore their lives apart, man.
Yeah. Well, and shit, the Hammonds, same way, they served a sentence, and then they got resentenced under a mandatory minimum of a domestic terrorism charge. When all they did was set a back burn, which burned 140 acres of BLM ground, but it saved probably tens of thousands of acres. and and it was all due to a dispute over a damn wildlife refuge, and which was much the same with the Bundys. It was the desert tortoise, and I don't know if there was any certain species up in Oregon that they were trying to, save or whatever, but it all had to do with the environmental lobby.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's one of those constant struggles, and especially once you get west of the Rockies, that's when the true kind of open range type outfits start popping up. I mean, it's a constant struggle. It's and I don't know what's your thoughts on Trump moving the BLM offices to Grand Junction, but I think that's a good start. And if you're gonna work with ranchers out west, you probably better be out west where you can interact with them.
I think it's a good thing. I've noticed, plenty of people that I know have commented the same, that I like or hate Trump. The federal agencies that we deal with have been a little better to deal with under his administration. So I see that as a good thing, and I do. I think the closer that people get to the issues, the more time you spend out there doing what we do, the more time both parties spend out there, I think you'll see conflict lessen. I would hope. So I think it's a good thing. So.
I think so too, but we're running a little long, so I think we might wrap it up. But I'd love to have you back on again. I'd kind of like to discuss a little bit more of this, kind of the nuances of running the open range BLM type stuff. I'm really interested in it, just just from a personal standpoint. But I think it's important that people know what we have to deal with, and I think, like I said, the more stories we can have like this, personal accounts of getting out into the public, I think the better off we are. And whether it makes a difference in the end, I don't know, but it's worth a shot. I've noticed some of the kind of the trends over the last couple of years is, people like authentic content. It's whatever that content may be, but if it's coming from a real place, people like it. And I think that's kind of one of the things that drives the popularity of, what little popularity I have here is, there's, I'm a master bullshitter, but there's really no bullshit in what I'm saying. It's, you can spin a story and make it entertaining, but at the end of the day, it's all rooted in truth. And I think the more stories, real life stories we can have of people like you, out in the middle of nowhere, basically. I mean, it really is just out in the middle of nowhere. And, learning what it takes to get these cattle to feed and, eventually get them on a dinner plate. It's a lot of work, and if we were left completely alone to our own devices, it's still going to be a lot of damn work. But the more hurdles you got to jump, it becomes dang near impossible at times. So, and I don't know. Like I said, if you're willing, I'd love to have you back on. We'll hash it out a little bit more. But I appreciate you coming on, and I've enjoyed the discussion.
Yeah, not a problem. So, anytime. I appreciate what you're doing. So,
well, thank you, sir. Well, if you want people to find you on social media, go ahead and tell them where they can find you. And
I'm not much of a social media person. We made some videos just for kind of our own enjoyment. Never plan on anybody watching them. But if you enjoy them, just search my name on YouTube or whatever, I guess. But so I really don't care if anybody finds me on social media, but you're welcome to. We just have a batch of puppies I need to get sold, so I encourage everybody to come buy some of those. So
Good.
Top-notch cow dogs. So
perfect. Well, Chet, once again, thank you. Thanks for your time. I do appreciate it, and well, I look forward to visiting with you again.
Yeah. Look forward to hearing you. So.
All right. Thanks, man. Well, hey, the audio is cutting out here and there, so I'll try to piece it together as much as I can, but I'll get that out later this week. And it was a fun one, man.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
And there you have it, folks. Mr. Chet Simper. I really enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate you coming on, Chet. It was very informative. Felt like it was a good conversation. The audio came out a lot cleaner than I was expecting when we were first on it, but it worked out pretty good. And I look forward to hashing this out a little bit more in the future. But I hope you guys got a little better insight of the relationship between your private sector rancher and ranch hand and the government bureaucrats that are charged with really not even so much managing the land, but partnering with these ranchers to manage the land and the environment and making sure it's sustainable for future generations. And the ranchers really get a bad knock in the media and public perception, and a lot of times they get labeled as anti-government or right-wing extremist types, but really they're just wanting to run some cows and eventually put a steak on your plate. And more than anything, they just want to be left alone so that they know the land, they know the cattle, they know the water, and they know how best to run their outfit. And it's hard enough to do that in country like that. The country's pretty unforgiving, and when you're running on really tight margins, it's the harder you make it on somebody, the less likely it is to succeed and be sustainable. And the American cowboy is kind of glorified in the minds of the public, the cowboy and the rancher, and but the more, I guess, environmentally conscious people become, and I use that word very loosely because more than anything, it's just the climate is being used to and the environment is being used to just promote a left-wing socialist type agenda. And if you don't believe me, just go read through some of the proposals in the Green New Deal, whether it be the AOC version or Bernie Sanders. It's all designed it's using climate and environment as an excuse to push forward these big government socialist programs. And because of that, so that your normal rancher gets pretty well shit on by the media for being for not caring about the environment when they have the utmost reason to protect the environment. They live out there. That's how they make their living. And just the nature of the business, if you don't take care of your rangeland and your water sources, then your cattle are going to suffer, and you're probably going to go out of business. And so it's a ludicrous thing to think that your normal rancher doesn't have the best intentions in mind for the environment. I mean, it's really counterintuitive, but that's kind of the narrative that's been pushed over the last several years. And I hope this conversation maybe will help change some people's minds that aren't in the ranching business, or maybe that have the wrong idea of some of these grievances that ranchers have against the BLM, and they're not really so much anti-government as that they're really just being pushed around by an out of control government. It's not so much they're anti-government as they're anti the way the government is acting towards them, and they've got some very valid arguments and cases against it. And so I thought this was a really good conversation. I hope you guys got a lot out of it, and I hope you would share this with your friends, and especially this episode in particular, where it's just an average ranch hand and Chet, which I don't mean that condescendingly at all, because as you listen to him, you can tell he's a very intelligent guy, very well thought out, and he chooses to work on the place that he does because he enjoys it and has a love for the land and the cattle, and just it's more than just a job at that point. You're living a way of life, and I would really encourage you to share this show. I'm really kind of proud of this conversation, and like I said, is a more serious one, but I think it's a very, very important conversation to have, and the more average people that aren't concerned with these issues that know about it, the better informed they can be, and so they're not relying strictly on the media narrative of what goes on with these conflicts and altercations and confrontations between ranchers and the BLM. You can get a little more nuanced view of what actually happened instead of just listening to some jackass on TV tell you that these people are a danger to society and they're domestic terrorists and right-wing zealots and whatever else they choose to call these people, but they're really just people trying to make a living. And I don't know, if you would just share this show with your friends. Share it on Facebook, share it on Instagram, Twitter, whatever. I'll post all the links to it. And but I really think this was a good episode, and I really think people could get a lot out of it. So do me a favor and share it. Do Chet a favor and share it, and just kind of the Western rancher in general, whether you run on public land or not. I think the more people that hear about these type of things, the better off we are. So that being said, you can go find Chet on YouTube. He's Chet Simper. He's got some videos there, and he's on Facebook too. You can go find him if he chooses to friend you. That's up to him. But you can go find me on Facebook, Matt McKinley. Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat is at MickerMac85. And then you follow the show page, Burning Daylight, on Facebook and YouTube. And then you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat at Move Your Ass, MoveYourass. Go check out my website, burning-daylight.com. You can listen to the show there. If you're not real savvy on the apps part of your phone, you can just type in my website, and there's a tab that says listen. You can listen to the last 50 episodes there on my website. And also, there's my store. I've got a couple blog posts. I really got behind on that, but it's been busy. I'll get some up here in the near future. And also be prepared here in the next week or two, I believe. I got to go back home for my buddy Teed's wedding, and so I'll be gone for 4 or 5 days, and I'm just going to go ahead and not put out any content at that time. I'll probably take a week off, maybe a little bit more. I'll still be recording and stuff, I just won't be publishing everything. And with fall getting ready to be real busy, I'm going to try to get ahead of myself a little bit so I can really make it a little easier on myself. I'm not going to be so rushed. So I'm still going to record some some interviews and some solo stuff, but you won't see anything from about September, I believe it'd be like 16th, for about a week and a half. You won't see any episodes, but I'm still there, still doing my thing, just trying to get ahead. So anyways, thanks for listening. Still amazed that people still tuning in every day, and that's pretty awesome. So thank you for that, and keep doing what you're doing. I'll keep doing what I'm doing. Be good to each other. Have a safe weekend and Labor Day, and I'm gonna keep riding cows. So move your ass. We're burning daylight.